Thank you so much for taking the time to come and see us and sit down for this wonderful conversation. I mean, this is your first day of a press tour for your film. How do you feel?
Well, it feels great, especially it's in my hometown. So, happy to be visiting Quebec and happy to show the film to an audience for the first time today.
Mm-hmm. How long have you been working on 1995, 1995?
Actually, for, I would say, 3 years.
Wow.
We shot it last year.
Okay. So give us a sense for our audience to understand what the work of producing a movie is all about. We know the director will direct the actors and tell them how the scenes will go and the emotion that they're looking for. The actors will live or transcend those emotions. But what does a producer do on a movie?
A producer, I would say, is much like a conductor. They have to bring all the elements together. So whether it's starting from the script, making sure the script is ready, then finding the investors to a point where we have the budget necessary for the film, then I guess backing the director to find the best possible crew, locations, actors. It's really surrounding the director to give him or her everything they need to really make the movie, and occasionally we have some creative feedback to give.
Occasionally some creative feedback. What kind of feedback would you give to a director, for example?
Well, to Ricardo, very little, because he really knows what he's doing, and he has a certain style. And but for example, in the edit or in casting, in the edit, say, well, this scene seems a bit long or repetitive, or what about this type of music here, and it's more suggestions than directions, I would say.
In your case, Madame Poulin, you've produced a lot of movies. You've worked with a lot of Quebec directors, Canadians as well as Americans.
Absolutely.
You come here with 3 nominations. Correct me if I'm wrong. Oscar nominations, 2 Oscar nominations. Still, am I foreshadowing something? Let's hope
maybe.
I am for you. We'll see what
Perhaps.
the future holds. But what are some of the challenges you can face in a movie production? And we'll get into the case of 1995 in a moment, but when you say that you can bring some creative feedbacks or suggestions or your perspective considering your experiences, can you give us some very specific examples of that?
Well, in this case, for example, I said, well, at the end, the music should be more upbeat.
Okay.
So I guess he didn't change it because of that, but it made Ricardo and his team and his creative team for sound thinking, okay, well, maybe let's try this, let's try that.
I love that.
In the casting, I would always, outside of Jean-Carl and the known actors, when we were casting in Morocco, for example, I would look at the casting also and say, okay, this one is my favorite. And usually it would align with what Ricardo liked. So
it's teamwork, basically.
Absolutely.
You mentioned Morocco. Let's get into that. Let's get into 1995. The scenario is quite fascinating. I have to maybe tell our audience right away to bring some tissues at the end of the movie. I cried in public, I have to admit. There's a very poignant last
and yet
scene.
it's a comedy.
Yet it's a comedy, but I don't want to spoil anything. So let's not get too much into details. But it kind of is rare in a movie setting that you get the opportunity to understand what really is happening behind the creation of a short film. For example, the one that is taking place in the movie 1995, played by Jean-Carl and directed by Ricardo Troggi. The movie takes place in Egypt, but you mentioned Morocco. Did you not film in Egypt?
No, we filmed in Morocco because the political climate in Egypt was a bit shakier. There's also less of a film industry there, so it would have been tougher to find crews, equipment. And it's not as safe. And when you travel with a Canadian crew, you want everybody to be safe and not have to go through, too many hardships. So you want to make it as easy as possible. So we shot in Morocco for a month. And then with a smaller crew, we went to Kathmandu.
Oh, wow. Yes, because there is a scene at the end where you're in...
the New Year's Eve scene and the end scene is in Nepal, yes.
Yeah, beautiful, very colorful as well. Why did you, and I'll use one of the words that you used because we do highlight some of those hardships in the movie. Again, I will refrain from spoiling anything, but Why highlight the hardships in that country and not film there?
Well, there's insurance issues, safety, and because it can look the same. We made it look the same, but it's very similar looking. And it was just a safer place for
overall.
us to work.
Mm-hmm. So in filming in Morocco instead of Egypt, it's interesting that you do that. This morning I was listening to Ricardo Troggi, who's on Première Heure, our Radio-Canada colleagues, and he was saying, I don't want to film a film about Egypt in Egypt. It's not interesting to me. What makes it interesting from a, producer's perspective or maybe even a director's perspective to create an environment that is elsewhere but in the country of reference?
There's so many things involved. There's logistics, safety, insurance, budget. The people, I knew somebody in Morocco having shot there previously that I trusted. So that's very important because working with people you don't know, it's a lot of money being spent very quickly. So it's good when you trust people. So, and for the creative team, for the art direction team, it's interesting because they had to recreate Egypt 1995 in Morocco. So there had to be, creative things involved. But for example, the hotel where we shot,
yes,
that hotel could have been in Cairo because when we walked in, it's as is, by the way. So,
it is.
Yeah. So when we walked in,
I'm sorry to use the word, it's wretched. I would never sleep in a hotel like this. I'm pretty sure a lot of people, once they see the movie, would never sleep there as well.
We had it cleaned, and even then, it was awful to spend the day there because it was just wretched.
Wow.
But we walked in, and we're like, Ricardo was like, yeah, this is it.
Oh, really? That's what it looked like when I did.
Pretty much, because we went twice on pre-location. We went the year before because we thought we would have the financing. Then we didn't. So went back after.
That's one of the big challenges, of course, to get the financing to produce such a movie. 3 years in the making as well. A lot of research. As you mentioned, you're recreating this environment that happened in 1995. For people who are just joining the conversation, Ricardo's latest movie, 1995, is portraying his experience in a show that was broadcasted on Radio-Canada called La Course Destination Monde. I can remember vividly that show and an impact that had.
Denis Villeneuve won it.
There you go, exactly. Yeah. Did you used to watch La Course Destination Monde? What did you like about it?
Well, I liked the adventure of it. It was, and at the time we had no internet, no anything. So to have all these kids, in their 20s travel the world and send in, made you dream, made you want to travel.
Yeah. Did that somehow inspire you to get into the movie business?
No, that wasn't it.
That wasn't it. When did you get interested in the movie business?
I was going to go into advertising and moved to Toronto, and my first interview was with the Academy of Canadian Film and Television. They hired me, so
there you go.
Then that was it.
Then
I said, "Oh, that sounds like fun."
Is it still fun?
Yes.
More than 18 movie productions later?
Yes, it is. Because every time you do a production, it's a new project. It's frustrating because you start fresh every time, no matter if you went to the Oscars, or it's just as hard to get the necessary financing, to get the script where it needs to be, to assemble the cast, everything. But it's what makes it fun as well. And this part is what makes it very rewarding when you see people enjoying the movie, and it's exciting to show it. I think the most people we've watched it with was maybe 15 people
so far.
Yeah,
since the movie's finished.
Yeah.
Wow. So it
was finished yesterday, actually.
Was it really yesterday?
Yeah, pretty much.
Wow. So what I saw this morning was the first time that was officially all finished. Wow. It's so well put together, the excitement and the visuals. It's so there's that Ricardo Troggi signature, of course. For all of you who've seen the previous movies, you'll recognize that signature that is so typical of him. What's exciting about this, about seeing now correct me if I'm wrong on this. I think you worked, Sphère Média worked on the production of the first movie, but you were not part of the production
producer
team,
of
right?
the first three movies were produced by another producer.
Okay, so
who sold her company to Sphère Média, and I was brought on and produced this one, and it was a nice gift, and working with Ricardo is just amazing. So
yeah,
he's incredibly creative and very I guess rassembleur.
Yeah, he likes to bring people together.
Yes, and he gives a lot of latitude to his acolytes, to the DOP, the production designer, and I think that's what makes a good movie in the end, is because everybody has their own talent and they all bring it together.
Mm-hmm. You yourself have probably done the research in order to better understand his signature, in order to be part of the team.
Of course.
Again, as you mentioned, they were doing their research to bring 1995 to life. Have you been able to see that evolution in his art?
Absolutely.
And see where he is today compared to the other movies? How would you describe that?
I think this movie shows, well, of course, he's more mature. He's directed a lot of film, television. In the film itself, he's, in his 20s, so there's a maturity there. But I also think there's a creative maturity. He's evolved a lot. I also think you don't need to see the other three films to understand this one.
Completely agree with you.
To understand that it's, Ricardo Troggi doing it. It stands alone. It stands on its own. And even if you meet the family for the first time, it doesn't matter. You'll still enjoy them.
I laughed so hard. His mother is such a beautiful character. The creation, you say that his power is to bring people together in order to have his vision come to life in his movies. I believe that his way of creating these characters is what stands out from my perspective in his movies. Your ability to produce such a beautiful movie, congratulations.
Thank you.
Again, have Oscar nominees behind your belt. You've worked with amazing producers from Francis Leclerc to Kim Nguyen, now Ricardo Troggi. Jean-Marc Vallée, of course, avec Café de Flore, John Crowley. The list goes on and on. What's next for you? You mentioned that it takes 3 years to produce a movie like this one. You're probably working on your next...
I'm working on one. It's an Irish-Canada co-production with Sarah Paulson, Shira Haas, and Whitney Peake.
Wow.
And just assembling the last little pieces of change to shoot it in the fall. It's in English, directed by Aisling Walsh, who directed a movie called Maudie on Maud Adams years ago. So
wow,
hopefully that will come together soon.
Yeah, I see a sparkle in your eye when you're talking about that. You mentioned
that's
Sarah
been in the
Paulson.
making 5 years. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. Your guts are into that one. Yes.
They're into every movie I make. This one's just been a bit tougher.
I understand. Well, the context, right, has been a little bit tougher.
Yes, absolutely.
So what would you say to the little girl from Sainte-Foy now, from where you stand in a professional perspective?
Well, I'd say if I have a lot of friends whose kids want to work in the film business, and since in Quebec City there's not that many, they always, they write to me, and would you speak to my son or my daughter? And I always do, but I always tell them you have to be, whether it's wanting to be a director, writer, actor, producer, whatever, I say, you have to be so passionate about it, because it's not an easy route, and it's starting over each time. So, but if you have the passion, it's a great thing to do in life.
When you have passion, you never work a day in your life.
I do. Yeah.
Madame Poulin, thank you so much for coming in studio. That was a great conversation.
You're
I appreciate
welcome.
it.
Thank you.
Longue vie to 1995 and your career as a producer. Thank you.
Merci.